Hello. Today's poem we're considering is Those Winter Sundays by Robert Hayden. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, it would be greatly appreciated if you would. Thank you so much. I have the poem here, so let's start. Sundays too, my father got up early and put his clothes on in the blue-black cold. Then with cracked hands that ached from labour in the weekday weather, made banked fires blaze. No one ever thanked him. I'd wake and hear the cold splintering, breaking. When the rooms were warm, he'd call, and slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house. Speaking indifferently to him, who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? This remarkable poem of reflection and revelation is multi-layered and open to many interpretations, so there's plenty to unpack here. Let's start. Those Winter Sundays is a poem Robert Hayden wrote in 1962. In the poem, an adult speaker reflects on his childhood when his father rose early on freezing Sunday mornings in winter to light fires and warm the house before anyone else rose out of bed. At the time, the speaker failed to appreciate this and the other ways his father expressed affection for his family. As an adult, looking back and examining these memories, he only now understands the selfless and often thankless nature of parental love. In this respect, Those Winter Sundays is a love poem Hayden writes to his father. Although you is not used, the father's presence, like a ghost, populates the poem and is Hayden's sole focus. The poem explores the complicated dynamics of family love. It reminds us how, rather than through words, many people express love through action, doing practical things that benefit the people they love. Words, after all, don't warm houses. The poem immediately establishes itself as memory recalled, written in the past tense, and deeply personal, likely autobiographical, being written in the first person voice. My father, and I'd wake and hear. In line 1, my father quickly establishes the poem's subject, the father and son relationship. The opening words, Sundays too, stresses the sacrifice his father regularly made, rising early on his only day of rest after a week of laborious physical work. Line 2 stresses how cold the house is, blue-black cold. Blue-black, an example of synesthesia, where the adjective applies colour, the sense of sight, to something that is usually only felt. This technique creates a concrete image that stresses the cold's intensity. The adjective blue-black suggests the colouring of a bruise, the physical pain his father regularly endures to warm the house for his family. Blue-black suggests the early morning is dark and unpleasant, but his father has the determination, driven by love, to light the fires and warm the home. Synesthesia is one of several writing and rhetorical techniques Hayden employs in this sophisticated poem. In line 2, the hard consonant L sound in clothes, blue, black and cold mimic the freezing temperature the father endures once he leaves the warmth of his bed to dress. Lines 3 to 5 detail the father's life and why he rises early to light the fire. We are told he's a labourer, a blue-collar worker. His hands are already cracked, his cracked hands, and ache from tough manual work. Line 4, weekday weather, suggests that he works outdoors and continues his hard work at the weekend in a domestic setting. Lines 3 and 4 use assonance to stress the damage to the father's hands and the pain he endures. Cracked hands that ached from labour. In line 5, the plosive B sounds, banked, fires, blaze, give the impression of flames igniting and presents the father as godlike, the bringer of light. Fires suggests an emotional warmth his father generates but never expresses verbally. On line 5, the full stop caesura after blaze is the culmination of a sentence-like section that began with the poem's first word. This section, supported through enjambment, run-on lines, stresses the lengthy, taxing chore the father undertakes to warm the house. Following this caesura, the statement, "No one ever thanked him," positions the father apart from the rest of the family, especially from the speaker, and makes him seem unappreciated and ignored, a character the reader sympathises with. Its placement makes this statement blunt, candid and powerful. It makes us a little critical of the speaker, now examining his father's actions in retrospect, clearly regretting his failure to give his father the recognition he deserved. Yet we also accept that this is often the way the parent-child relationship works. The second stanza sheds more light on the speaker's role in this memory. The first stanza's focus moves from the father to the child and his perceptions at the time. In line 6, he wakes to the sound of the house thawing as warm drives away the cold. The speaker hears the wooden structure creak as it expands, having contracted during the night. Cold, splintering, breaking. This attention to detail, using the sense of hearing, creates a textured description, enhanced again through synesthesia. Here, the poet associates the sense of touch, cold, with the sense of sound, splintering, and merges sound and touch, breaking. Synesthesia creates a jarring sensation, perhaps mirroring the child's initial disorientation on first waking. Onomatopoeic words add a sonic description. We can hear the splintering and the breaking of the ice as the frost thaws. Now, be prepared for a poetic punch, which we do not see coming until lines 8 and 9. Lines 8 and 9 subvert our expectations that the poet will only present an idealised picture of his father and family life. Lines 8 and 9 pack a punch. We hear that the boy slowly rises and dresses, fearing the chronic angers of that house. Wow. These lines prevent the poem from being simplistic and sentimental and introduce a high degree of sophistication. The negative emotive words chronic angers imply ongoing resentment that could never be cured or fixed. Tellingly, the speaker says that house rather than that home, which is impersonal, implying something dysfunctional in the family dynamic. Perhaps this is a house frequently filled with conflict, even violence. Perhaps the speaker is implying the father carried a resentment that negatively affected the family dynamic. Interestingly, the mother is absent from the poem, with the father carrying out domestic duties, raising more questions and allowing the reader to interpret the poem on their terms. We are left to speculate upon the chronic angers that pervades the house and the family. Hayden grew up in this kind of environment, which makes the poem even more autobiographical. Anger, a word we associate with the heat it generates, suggests the father raised another kind of heat around the home. Interestingly, although line 9 marks the end of a stanza, line 10 continues the phrase and the speaker's thoughts. The stanza break creates a distance break on the page between lines 9 and 10. The literal distance on the page conveys an emotional distance between father and son. In line 10, placing speaking indifferently to him as the first line of stanza 3 makes the statement blunt and candid, stressing the speaker's indifference. Perhaps the chronic angers is partly the reason for the son speaking indifferently to him. Still, his attitude appears callous when his indifference is juxtaposed with examples of his father's thoughtful deeds, including in line 11 that he had driven out the cold. And in stanza 3, we hear of further thoughtful acts his father carried out for his son. In line 13, the speaker details his father even polished my good shoes as well. Stanza 3 is important because it provides the first interaction between son and father. Here we realise that in the poem, cold symbolises the lack of emotional warmth or connection between the son and the father. Polishing my good shoes as well on a Sunday implies he readied the family for church and cared about his son's appearance in public, which could be read as both caring and authoritarian. The sound of polishing is created by sibilance, repeating S and sh sounds, adding sonic description and texture to the speaker's account. Polished my good shoes as well, and making this line end stopped, containing the thought, the description, emphasizes his father's kindness. Therefore, juxtaposed either side of chronic angers, the poet presents a complicated man, angry and authoritarian, yet caring, used to outdoor work, yet domestic enough to polish shoes and heat the home. In so doing, the poet presents an unsentimental, sophisticated description of his father, a complex individual. On line 13, epizeuxis, a type of repetition involving repeating the exact word or phrase. Here, what did I know? "What did I know?" intensifies the sentiment behind the rhetorical question that ends line 14. What could a child know of the complexity of parental love and the human condition? Epizeuxis reveals the speaker's inner conflict as he tries to come to terms with his past. He still wrestles with his conscience and tries to figure out why he was so mean to his father. Looking back on his childhood from his adult perspective, he reevaluates his father's love. It is a moment of revelation. He now understands his father's routines was an understated expression of love, born of a desire to keep his young son safe and provide comfort and the routine children crave. The final line of Love's austere and lonely offices elevates his father's role. The speaker now recognizes his austere and tough life without comfort and lonely life because he dedicated all his time to providing and caring for him. Lonely implies the son's indifference contributed to this loneliness. Offices, a word associated with authority and service, implies the father fulfilled his parental duties and responsibilities to the letter. However, as the speaker reflects, the sense of remorse and regret is tangible. There is little resolution at the poem's end. The only comfort for the speaker is the relief in expressing feelings he has repressed for many years. The poem ends with a rhetorical question. The speaker asking a question he still cannot answer. Those Winter Sundays is made up of 2 quintets and a quatrain sandwiched between. That is, a first and third stanza of 5 lines each, while the second stanza has only 4 lines. The structure doesn't follow a specific form, although having 14 lines, it resembles a sonnet, a form we associate with love poems. Choosing 14 lines is perhaps a subtle gesture to emphasize the speaker's love for his father and the appreciation he feels his father truly deserved. Perhaps the son's failure to articulate his love to his father, or his father's failure to express his love verbally to his son, is suggested by the unconventional and unformed sonnet structure. Almost a sonnet, but not quite a sonnet. Hayden doesn't use a strict regular metre. Instead, he writes in free verse with a conversational tone, reinforced by enjambment. For example, lines 4 and 5. From labour in the weekday weather made banked fires blaze. However, he employs iambic pentameter in most lines, which, coupled with the poem's 14 lines, mirrors the sonnet's form. Iambic pentameter is often used in sonnets as it mimics the rhythm of English speech and lends the speaker a conversational voice. Although the poem's tone is matter-of-fact, it is tinged with remorse and regret in the final lines. Robert Hayden was an American poet who lived from 1913 to 1980. He was born in Detroit and was raised not by his biological parents, but by nearby neighbours who gave him the name Hayden. Hayden's upbringing was tough, and his childhood home was often fraught with violence and anger. Books were a form of solace for Hayden, who was bullied for having bad eyesight. yet he gained a scholarship and studied at the University of Michigan. On graduating, he pursued an academic career as a professor and researcher while publishing poetry. He received numerous prizes throughout his life and was the first black writer to hold the position of poetry consultant to the Library of Congress, a precursor of the Poet Laureate's role. Hayden died in 1980, aged 66. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting and helpful. If so, please hit the like button below. Also, check out our other videos on textual analysis and writing. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, it would be greatly appreciated if you would. Thank you so much again. Until next time, from Carol and me, write well.